With his performance against West Virginia, did Julian Lewis provide Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes with just a glimmer of hope of what could be to come up in Boulder? Do we know or at least feel confident about what the new look Denver Nuggets have as their core team identity so far in the young 2025 season? And were the Colorado Avalanche potentially trying to send a message with their play over the weekend and a contract extension handed out to a potential rising star earlier this morning? All things to come on today's rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. While you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube channel. You can find us at Denver Sports 1043 on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're watching us on X or on Facebook during our live broadcast, we appreciate you very much. Like, comment. We love interacting with your comments. Share and turn on those post notifications so that you never miss a moment with us. Plenty to get into today, so we welcome in our friend of the show, Denver sports analyst Jake Shapiro. Jake, how you doing?
Oh, I've had a colorful morning, Richie.
You have had a colorful morning, and I think what you're referencing is that you were one of the patrons in line down at Ball Arena to get your hands on the re-release of the Denver Nuggets City Edition Rainbow Skyline jerseys, my favorite jersey, definitely in recent years that the Broncos have released, and probably one of my favorites that they've ever worn.
Yeah, it's an awesome Nuggets jersey, Richie, and I think it's among the best jerseys in Nuggets history. The iconic blue skylines, the originals that the Kembe wore. You go back to David Thompson, Alex English kind of wearing those Maxey the Miner jerseys. And then, iconic-wise, the light blues for Carmelo, that just became iconic. I don't know if that's actually a good jersey, but the Nuggets have so many good branding elements, and this black rainbow skyline, I think, incorporated a lot of them, and also was worn at such a pivotal time in franchise history when Jamal Murray made all of those big plays in the bubble, had those giant games, and then Nikola Jokic, that was kind of his turn from being this really good player to being the best player in the league. So that'll be always a time we remember in Nuggets history, and now they're bringing out the black rainbows this year, in a year we all feel will be special again. I think it just kind of is poetic.
Yeah, it was definitely that 2020 bubble run was definitely a forging year for the Denver Nuggets. I think you saw the core that we see now take a huge step from a maturation standpoint and really kind of set them on the path that they're on now. And I will remember those jerseys as being synonymous with the comeback kids from Colorado and the back-to-back 3-1 games and dueling 50 burgers with Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray, and just so many great memories to come. And
my heart is still fluttering thinking about that Mike Conley shot.
Yeah. Yes.
Like literally
just
every
right
time I think about it, I'm like, oh no, oh no.
Yep. Yeah, how differently all of that could have been looked at. Well, we will get into the Nuggets a little bit later on, but I want to start, Jake, with what's going on up in Boulder, what we saw over this past weekend, and what it could potentially mean for the future of the Colorado Buffaloes program. I'm talking about the first start for Julian Lewis. It was a 29-22 loss to West Virginia, but statistically speaking, Julian Lewis performed about as well as any Buffs quarterback that's taken a snap during a larger game sample size this season. 22 of 35, just under 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And I feel like, unlike we've seen with Julian Lewis in his limited stints earlier in the season, I think he looked more comfortable and confident, and maybe there was less pressure behind him during it.
He looked like a 5-star quarterback in this game. He looked like the future of the Colorado Buffaloes program. And you're talking, Richie, about he looked like he had the best quarterbacking performance of the season for the Colorado Buffaloes. I'd agree with you. And that's without even considering the fact that it was a true freshman in Morgantown on the road in a conference game, like one of the toughest environments in the conference. And he went out and competed and made it a close game. He gave the Buffs a chance to win that game. I thought he was poised. I thought he was pretty disciplined for the game. I was really impressed with Julian Lewis for his real debut, so to speak.
I was too. And like I said, it doesn't translate to a win, but that's been the story of the Buff season over the last 5 or 6 weeks or so, is that even when the offense, which has been wildly inconsistent or unproductive, and the defense hasn't always given them a lot of favors, but even when it does seem to click, they just aren't able to kind of put both ends of the ball together or the special teams and really make it a full resounding team win. That being said, with the Buffs officially eliminated from bowl contention with their loss to West Virginia, eyes are now naturally turning and spinning forward to the future. And I think that that's great. But before that, Jake, I just have to ask, with what we saw from Julian Lewis against West Virginia, Why do you think it took up to this point to play Julian Lewis? I know Coach Prime had talked about the desire to maybe protect Juju, who, by the way, was 17 years old at the start of this college football season. So I can understand maybe in principle where he was going with that. But Jake, the quarterback play from Caden Salter and honestly Ryan Staub was so subpar and suboptimal for the entirety of this season that when you see what you saw against Julian Lewis, it's natural to wonder why they didn't go that direction sooner, right?
Yeah, and I think the thought is, like you're saying, that he wasn't ready. He was 17 years old. He was a young man coming onto campus, a young boy, really, not even a man yet. But you look at what Colorado amounted to this year, and Salter at the quarterback position with his play on the field and some of the things we've heard off the field. Why was he still in there for the Buffs? And they knew it because they were playing Ryan Staub. They didn't think Ryan Staub really had a future. Like, they knew going into the year that Juju Lewis was their guy for the future. Like, they brought him to Big 12 Media Day. So the question to me is, why didn't you turn to this guy in week 3 when it was pretty obvious that Caden Salter was not the guy for the Buffs this season? I don't know if it was Pat Shurmur trying to save his job and wanting to stay with the veteran over the young guy. But to me, I think you buy yourself more time if you go with the young guy, because you can blame it on the young guy trying to learn the playbook. It makes no sense what the Colorado Buffaloes have done this year in handling of Juju Lewis. And now you wait to play Juju Lewis, which is great. You're going to wait. You're going to only play him 4 games. He'll still have a red shirt in case things go wrong. You can still, keep a year of eligibility. Oh, wait. You played him 1 extra quarter throughout these games. So if he plays the final 2 Buffs games, he'll have played 4.5 games, which removes his year of eligibility on the back end of his college career. So I have no idea why Coach Prime has handled it this year. To me, this is another example of the unorganization of the Colorado Buffaloes program under Deion Sanders. They don't seem to have a plan. They're disorganized, and Deion Sanders is acting minute to minute rather than quarter to quarter, half to half, game to game, season to season. It's just minute to minute decisions without thinking about the long-term viability of any of those decisions.
I think those are very fair criticisms and assessments of the way things have gone down. I do think that from not just a game management standpoint, but when you talk about, you zoom out even just a shade or two, a lens or two, to just macro organization and management of the program and the roster, I do think there have been things that Coach Prime and the staff would like to take back, or certainly could have handled differently. Now,
Richie, and you say all the time, we talk about it, he's a good CEO.
Yeah.
This is a sign that he might not even be that.
Right. Yeah, no, I was a staunch defender from the time that Coach Prime set foot up in Boulder that you do not have to be, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, you do not have to be a bona fide X's and O's savant to succeed in the modern era and the landscape of college football, with the transfer portal, with NIL, and all of the advantages that you can bring in by being a CEO figurehead type personality. That can work. The problem is, like a good CEO, you have to bring in the appropriate people who can circumvent and or buy into where you are lacking. So that is why the reliance on a Pat Shurmur, or previously a Sean Lewis, or a Robert Livingston is so important, because if the CEO doesn't have other members of the board underneath him from a management standpoint, the company's going to fail.
Yeah, and that's been one of my issues with the Colorado Buffaloes this year is, yeah, they've got Warren Sapp, they've got Marshall Faulk, they've got all these guys with gold jackets. It's really cool, I will admit. Do we know if any of these guys can actually coach football? Do we know?
Kicking pylons.
Right. Like that's the only thing we've seen from Warren Sapp. We're not actually sure if these guys can coach football. So that's my question. But you talk about turning to the future now, and I think the future of this program, obviously there's some big things to work out with the coaching staff, and you've changed offensive coordinators now, or at least play callers, whatever you're going to call it. The number one goal for the Colorado Buffaloes going forward, you got to keep all these other programs away from Juju Lewis. You have to have Juju Lewis be the starting quarterback for game 1 of the start of the 2026 season. So whatever it takes, and I'm literally talking, if you need to throw your entirety of your budget, your $21 million at Juju Lewis, you're doing it, man. Like, I'd like to keep Jordan Seaton. That's part of it. Like, maybe finding a way to keep Jordan Seaton and Juju Lewis, those 2 core pieces. But Omarion Miller's nice. All this is nice. But Juju Lewis is the future of the program. And we've already seen the Colorado Buffaloes with a NFL-level quarterback. That team can compete in the Big 12. Juju Lewis might be that. So to have that at the college level is such a benefit.
Yeah, I think the question is when you look at Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, what they were able to mask, because I think a lot of the problems that we've seen bubble up in this 2025 season existed last year.
100%.
But the dynamic and the talent and the explosive playmaking capability for Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball and Shedeur being one of the better quarterbacks in program history, masking that and covering up those warts, it's now, I think, much more glaring to see what it looks like and what quarterback play can descend to from the depths or from the heights that we saw it last season. And so Julian Lewis, to your point, if he provides you with at least a reasonable hope that you are not relying on the Caden Salters and the Ryan Staubs of next year's class or transfer cycle or whatever, you've got to push your chips in toward that.
Well, and let's just look at it from a micro standpoint in that West Virginia game. At the end of the game, Deion Sanders calls that timeout unnecessarily where he should have kicked the field goal, and they end up kicking the field goal anyway. And if it had worked out and the Colorado Buffaloes got a stop on the next downs for West Virginia, they would have still gotten the ball back with about 30 seconds left. They could have gotten the ball back with about 100, or about a minute 30, but only 30 seconds left. Last year, you go into that the situation confident because it's Shedeur Sanders. We saw him hit Hail Marys multiple times. I mean, that Baylor game was unbelievable, right? So there was never a situation where the Buffaloes were out of a game last year, except for Kansas and Nebraska, because of in-game management decisions. Shedeur and Travis kept them alive and were able to, for lack of a better term, do a nose job to the nose that had been bitten off by Deion Sanders, right? Like, this year, they don't have the talent to cover up for these mistakes. And you started the show by talking about, they can't put all three faces together. Whose job is that? Whose job is it to put all three faces together?
Yeah, it would be the head coach in theory.
Yes.
So, Jake, this season in 2025 for the Buffs has not gone the way that many of us hoped, maybe closer to the way that some of us expected, given the departures at key positions that you saw. But you went from a 9-win team to a team that's now eliminated from bowl contention and may not win a game before the conclusion of the 2025 season. With what you saw from Julian Lewis in this one-game start sample size against West Virginia, and there will be time to extrapolate it forward, do you believe that the 5-star quarterback who has been kind of topsy-turvy and swirled around in terms of his potential standing and role within the team this year and beyond provides enough hope and a light far enough at the end of the tunnel that going into the 2026 season, we can have renewed hope and optimism around what the Buffs can be, maybe closer to what we saw last year?
If you have a quarterback in football, you always have a chance. And it looks like the Colorado Buffaloes have a quarterback. And that's the thing Deion Sanders is able to do. He is able to bring in this talent. The problem is he hasn't been able to bring it in across the board at every position, kind of like he's promised. But at this premier position, it appears the Colorado Buffaloes have the future of the Big 12 Conference at the quarterback position. So long as they're able to keep Juju Lewis on campus in Boulder, I think they have a chance. And that's where the hope lies for the Buffalo faithful.
Well, I certainly think that is the case. I think that it may be a case of a low floor where what we saw from Caden Salter and from Ryan Staub was just so suboptimal that anything that jumps above that, it's like water in the desert, you're trying to claw at it just to kind of cling to the hope that things could be better. And that may be the case. And Julian Lewis was 17 years old to start this college football season. He'll be 18 years old at the start of the next college football season, hopefully and presumably where he will have taken the mantle as the starting quarterback. And so I think there's still a lot of unknowns in play, but there is more, I think, to be known at the quarterback position after the start against West Virginia than there was prior to it as it relates to Julian Lewis.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the thing, is going into that West Virginia game, I was still kind of unsure about Julian Lewis because a couple appearances we've had were frankly just incomplete. I wouldn't even grade it. They were just incomplete. Now I tell you that Julian Lewis gets, a high grade for his freshman year based off of one successful performance and what we know to be the problems all around this program and this team. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, whether it's reshaping the coaching staff, whether it's bringing in some more talent, and I'm talking about from the high school level and in the transfer portal. And, I think they need to significantly look at their defense. Deion Sanders is one of the best defensive backs in football. He was able to get a couple of the best defensive backs in the country. Travis Hunter, and then you have Hood leave, who was awesome. And then you have Hodge, who is, a solid player. And you also had, by the way, one of the best DB recruits in the country who walked out the door. Don't forget Cormani McLean.
Yep.
So where did all that talent go in the secondary? Can Deion reshape and reform the secondary? I think that was so key to last year's team is, Colorado wasn't winning in the trenches, but they won everything outside. This year, they can't win outside even. They're not winning outside. They are winning on the offensive line a little bit. And Jordan Seaton, in his final year of college football next year, before he gets picked in the top 5 of the NFL draft, I think it's going to be so important to take advantage of that and establish a freaking run game, Richie.
Yep, that's going to be key, and we will see how the program and Coach Prime's offensive and defensive philosophy molds and adjusts and adapts. Well, I can't say identity because he doesn't believe in identities, right? He's never been a part of a team despite all the successful legendary Cowboys teams and 49ers teams.
Identity.
They didn't have identity. So I tried to come up with a different word.
No identity.
Yeah, I don't want to trigger anything, but we will see how it shakes out going into the remainder of this season and into next year. I want to shift gears to the Colorado Avalanche, Jake, because there was some interesting speculation from Elliot Friedman, who is a prominent NHL insider and one of the more informed sources around the league. And he said something that I thought was interesting in relation to the 9-1 drubbing of the Edmonton Oilers by the Colorado Avalanche, followed by their overtime win over the Vancouver Canucks, which may or may not have helped spur a potential contract extension. But Elliot Friedman, when he was asked about the Avalanche Oilers blowout win, 9-1, he made a point to say, based on his understanding of what he's being told, that the Avs were out to send a message against the Edmonton Oilers. Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, one of the higher profile tandems in the National Hockey League, a team that the Avs had to go through in the Western Conference Finals to get to their third Stanley Cup. And we've obviously had the juxtaposition of McKinnon and McDavid, right? They're kind of like this 1A, 1B about who's going to be the best player in hockey at any given time. And I found it interesting that a reputable insider, not someone trying to get clicks or potentially start, any kind of rumor or anything, just said, no, from what I was told, these guys within the locker room, they were hunting for a blowout against Edmonton, and that's why they were going for, instead of late in the third period when the game was clearly out of hand, they were still putting the puck on net. They were cycling it in the offensive zone, and they wanted to kind of keep pushing that barrier forward. And to me, that shows that this team, I think, maybe more so than they have in recent years, recognizes the power and the impact of the moment and the situation that they're in, with the way that they are set up to potentially make a 4th cup run in franchise history and returning to that offensive identity and standard that they had when they won the cup in 2021 that said, hey, you might be able to beat us 6-5, but that's what it's going to take because we are just going to be so overwhelmingly offensively dominant that you're going to have a hard time keeping up.
Yeah, and it's been so long for the Avalanche where they've been on top of the sport, and then they roll into April and kind of just peter out, right? Obviously, they had the cup win a couple of years ago, but it feels like the Avs for a bunch of years have just kind of sat there rolling through the motions of the regular season, waiting to get to the playoffs. I'm not saying they should win the President's Trophy. I'm not saying that might even be a good idea, but competing as one of the top teams in the NHL all year long and kind of proving a point to everyone else that you are not to be trifled with and that you're not the team the last couple of years, I think is valid. I think that is something they need to prove not only to other teams in the NHL, but even inside of their own organization. Like, it's been a while that the Avs have made a deep playoff run, right? It's also been a while to where, they make all these moves at the deadline and then they just peter out in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They need to prove that they're worthy of the moves that they're going to ask Chris McFarland to make at the deadline. And I think that's part of this, honestly. And also part of this is, like I said last year, Richie, as soon as they got this goaltender tandem, it's the first time the Avs have really had goalies. It was okay during the cup run with Kemper and Francouz, but this is the first time the Avs have really had goalies throughout this entire era. And I think that's a complete game changer. So now having that backstop coupled with the offensive forwards, and By the way, Edmonton always getting off to these slow starts. I think the Avs proved something. And we're going to see now with Edmonton, if like the last couple of years, they can go, oh, that was the night on the bench we realized we need to get our stuff together. Or if they're going to actually fade away, because the Oilers have been toying with this for a couple of years now, and they can only fire so many coaches to inspire a cup run.
Yeah, no, I think that it was intriguing to me to hear that. I am actually thrilled if that is the case, and I believe that it was.
And who's back in that locker room inspiring people?
Gabe Landeskog.
There you go.
Yep. And you mentioned Chris McFarland and the moves that he's going to be potentially asked to make. He's done so much of an overhaul on this roster over the last handful of seasons. And another move was made today, signing a 2-year contract extension for Gavin Brindley, the forward that came over in the trade with the Columbus Blue Jackets, where Miles Wood and Charlie Coyle were sent in exchange for second and third round picks, and Gavin Brindley. Brindley has had a very small sample size here with the Avs, and now he is locked in through the 2027 season. And I think this caught some people off guard, but to a certain degree, there's an element of, hey, when you know, you know. And Gavin Brindley has been given legitimate, trusting minutes from Jared Bednar in high pressure and very important critical situations. He got the first shift in the overtime period against the Canucks, ends up scoring the game-winning goal, getting his own rebound off of a shot attempt. He's getting power play minutes on the PP2 unit, and he's moving up from a bottom six type of acquisition into the middle six and flirting with potentially top six opportunities already in this young season.
So how much money would you give Gavin Brindley as a guy who is scheduled to become a restricted free agent after this season?
I don't know. If you're telling me that a guy like LOC, Logan O'Connor, who's been a fourth line, bottom six type of player for the majority of his career, is getting 2.5. I don't know that I would go much higher than $1 million a year. Or maybe since it's a 2-year deal and you want to juice it at 1.5, but it's got to be closer to the league minimum than it is to 1.5 million.
Year one is a 2-way deal, which means he can get sent down to the AHL, back to the NHL at any time for $850K.
Wow.
Year two is $900K 1-year deal.
I actually love that. I mean, the league minimum in the NHL is like right around $750,000, I believe. Yeah. So you're getting him for $100,000 ish, $200,000 more than league minimum. And if the early signs of the 2025 season are an indicator of things to come, Gavin Brindley is going to be significantly outperforming that contract when the postseason rolls around.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure the ins and outs of an NHL contract, but I'm pretty sure he would still be under team control after that as well.
Restricted free agency.
Again.
Yep.
So the Avs aren't at risk of losing him, even though they only signed him for 2 years. If you love Gavin Brindley and you're like, well, I wish they would have signed him for longer and given more money. Like, we'll see about that, after this season, then 2 more. So Gavin Brindley's going to be here for a while. And it's something I talked about with you, Richie, a couple weeks ago on this show. Having that scoring depth is so important. And it looks like this can be one of those kids that can provide some of that talent and scoring touch from your third line. And having that is just something that separates you from the rest of the NHL and makes you one of those top tier teams. So if they don't have to shop for that at the deadline, but instead already have that in-house, that saves you so much time and assets and long-term planning. So I think this has been an absolute steal of a move from Chris McFarland, because you look at how they got Gavin Brindley. You got a second and third round pick in that deal. That was basically just a throw in. And, some reports are out there that the Avs liked Gavin Brindley in the draft, but just didn't end up with him. We'll see. I don't know how true that is, but he was clearly a really good player in college. And the Avs found a way to get him on the roster in a deal that was primarily shaped around the idea of just dumping salary. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I always this is like when you have an NHL or an NFL evaluation where you get a guy in the second round or the fourth round.
The Broncos really like Josh Allen.
Yes. Yeah. Or you get a guy in the fourth round, like, we had a second round grade on him, and look how great we are. It's like in the 2023 draft, the Avs picked Callum Ritchie at 27 and Mikhail Gulyayev at 31. Brindley went 34th. So you had 2 picks in a span of 7 before Brindley was drafted that you could have taken him, and you didn't. If you were that interested, you probably would have, but it's irrelevant.
They're interested enough to trade Charlie Coyle for him.
True.
And he's a good player.
True.
Charlie Coyle's the only guy I think in this trade that has more points than Brindley out of the 3 right now, which makes sense because Coyle's been around for forever.
Yes. No, I think that's fair. And it doesn't really matter how you go back in the Wayback Machine and look at what could have been or might have been or should have been, because Gavin Brindley's here now. He's locked in on a 2-year deal that's very, very team friendly. And I suspect, as I said, his production on the ice, because of the minutes and the opportunities and the trust that it appears Bednar has already placed on him in this young season, is only going to expand.
Yeah, I'll just caution people with, for those in the market that watch a lot of DU hockey like myself, the college season is a lot shorter than the NHL season. So I wouldn't be surprised if a player like this, who's really playing his first season in the NHL after coming out of college, hits a wall at some point and then struggles for 10 games here or there, especially a guy that was already given up by, one organization. But at least what we've seen early on, the skill and the speed and the shot is something that's really valuable. And it looks like he's got a little grit too. And that's worth way more than $850K. And that's what he's making, which is just a really good thing to have when you're up against it like the Avs. And we all know they're going to have to pay Cale Makar just a god-smacking amount of money here.
And he's worth every single penny and then some.
I mean, I'd give him literally the max amount of contract. There's no money I wouldn't give Cale Makar.
Jake, on the way out here, we threw up a poll question on our Denver Sports 103 The Fan Twitter and YouTube pages about the Broncos game against the Chiefs, because I think it's a big question. And this term gets thrown around a lot, must win. But given the way that the AFC West looks with the top 3 teams in the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs, the way the Chiefs have kind of started to creep up and figure things out, and the Broncos and Chargers holding strong, plus the AFC landscape at large, is this game for the Broncos on Sunday a must-win for what the Broncos want to accomplish when the playoffs come around?
No, it's not a must-win, but it is for the Chiefs.
I was going to say there is an alternative perspective.
If you swap the two teams and you ask, is this a must-win game for the Chiefs against the Broncos? I would say absolutely. I wrote about it this morning on denversports.com. I listened to Andy Reid yesterday and what he had to say in his press conference, and he talked about the urgency and how there's a lot of parity in the NFL. We all know that, but he made it clear that the Chiefs are all in on this game. And if you look at it, the Broncos only have 6 games, including, they have the bye and 6 games after this Chiefs game. If they go up and win this Chiefs game, they'll be 3.5 games up on Kansas City with a jump start on the tiebreaker. And there's only 6 games left.
Yeah.
Kansas City's not catching Denver if Denver wins this game. Now, the Broncos can still win the AFC West if they don't beat Kansas City. They could go in and win the Christmas game. They could win the Washington game. They could win against Las Vegas. There's plenty of pathways for the Broncos to still win the AFC West. There's only one pathway in my mind that the Chiefs can still win the AFC West, and that's they need to beat the Broncos on Sunday.
No, I think that's a very fair perspective. And I think that similarly to how you saw the collective AFC at large, and maybe the NFL at large, rooting for the Denver Broncos in a Week 18 matchup against the B squad Kansas City Chiefs, because a win in the Mile High City would prevent Joe Burrow and the surging offensive Cincinnati Bengals from entering the wild card playoff picture. The Broncos took care of business in blowout fashion, as they were expected to, and Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, who dealt with injuries during the season and all that, had to remain on the sideline. So I would think similarly, the rest of the NFL and certainly the rest of the AFC is going to be putting on their orange and blue hats and hoping that the Broncos can do their part to help push Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes further out of that playoff picture and create a situation where a guy who has never had his season end before the AFC Championship game in regulation to not making the playoffs in Patrick Mahomes.
So you're telling me I might turn on NBC Sunday at about 5:30 and Jack Collinsworth and Jason Garrett are going ding dong, the witch is dead.
God. That is probably something that would happen with the aforementioned situation that you had there. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. A lot to keep tabs on a busy sports week here in Colorado. The Buffs are obviously headed for their 4th bowlless season in the last 5 years. Dion slips further below 500.
Do you know the last time the Buffs won a postseason game?
Was it like 2016 they lost, right?
Yeah. Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, Alamo Bowl. Yeah, I don't know.
2004.
2004. 21 years and counting.
Killing me, man.
We will see if the Buffs, under Julian Lewis, who probably will only get to start one more game remaining in this season, can continue to build positive momentum in that direction. The Avs have an absolute dogfight ahead. Number 1 versus number 2 in the Western Conference, with the Anaheim Ducks coming to Colorado. Leo Carlson and the Ducks on a 7-game win streak. The Avs have yet to lose in regulation at home, and the Anaheim Ducks have won 7 straight. So something is going to give tonight at Ball Arena. We have the latest tip-off, unnecessary tip-off ever for the Nuggets against the Sacramento Kings at 9 o'clock. We will be here to chronicle it all for you and keep tabs on everything as we always do at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. Like and subscribe to our YouTube page. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, wherever you consume your social media sports content. We have it there for you. Grab your Altitude Authentic or Fanatics Denver Nuggets jersey, the Rainbow City Edition Skyline, one of my personal favorites. We will catch you all with a fresh slate of news tomorrow at noon on The Rundown.